The relic hung in silence, a sphere of dark metal, its hull dull and unmarked by insignia, drifting beyond the pale light of the twin suns. Admiral Valen watched it through the viewport of the radiant crown, hands folded behind his back. Around him, the command tier shimmered with gold and glass. Banners of the Imperium draped from ceiling to floor, each threaded with silver veins mined from conquered worlds. The air smelled faintly of perfume and ozone. A Terran hull, one of his? Aides murmured, voice trembling with mock awe. Recorded displacement, 7 million tons. Hull age, approximately 3 centuries. No active drive signature. Valen smiled thinly. A museum piece. Laughter rippled through the bridge. Technicians smirked behind their glass screens. Officers exchanged knowing glances. The Dominion had told stories of humans once bitter, relentless things that clawed at the stars before learning their place. They'd burned themselves out, supposedly, long before the Imperium rose. Scan it again, Valen said. Perhaps the ghosts of Earth still dream. The sensors returned static. No heat signature. No coms. Just the slow rotation of that ancient sphere, half buried in the scattered remains of some forgotten battlefield. The data feed labeled it automatically. Derelict class obsolete pattern. Magnify hull markings. The image expanded until the viewport filled with a single emblem etched in alloy. A broken circle enclosing a wolf's head. Poetic, one of the admirals sneered. Even their symbols were primitive. A chorus of laughter answered him. They debated whether to retrieve it, to mount it as a trophy on the Imperial Citadel's orbital ring. Someone joked about gifting it to the Academy as a teaching relic proof that civilization devoured the feral. Valen's smile widened. Send a fire team. I want its command core dissected before dusk. Orders rippled out. Across the fleet, a dozen smaller vessels adjusted position, engines whispering to life. 30,000 crew moved in orchestrated precision. They didn't notice the static climbing through their combands, or the faint distortion rippling across the starfield. Energy surge? A lieutenant asked, frowning. Artifact interference, came the bored reply. On screen, the relic continued to drift, but its shadow on the scanners no longer matched its position. Recalibrate tracking, Valen snapped. It's a mass shadow glitch. Numbers flickered. Coordinates shifted. The ship's II, Orion 7, hesitated for the first time in years. Alert. Mass variance detected. Object density exceeds expected by 214%. Impossible, murmured the science officer. Its hull shouldn't even hold. The lights dimmed. A low vibration crawled through the deck plate's dot then, a sound. Not an alarm, something older. A deep metallic groan, as if ancient gears were turning beneath oceans of pressure. The relics. Outer plating split along invisible seams, unfolding with the grace of a living thing. Beneath the worn alloy, a lattice of obsidian armor gleamed, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. The laughter stopped. Admiral, the aide whispered, it's powering up. From what source? No radiation, no fusion core. The aide's voice broke. Across the fleet, 10,000 ships pivoted, energy capacitors building. Weapon locks blinked red across the tactical map. Target the relic. Full spectrum barrage. Let's erase the myth. Within seconds, thousands of lances aligned on that single point of black. Every viewport across the formation filled with converging light. Fire. The void blazed. Tens of thousands of terajoules of plasma and particle streams slammed into the relic. The stars themselves vanished behind the glare. Silence followed. Sensors cleared. The relic remained, untouched, not a scratch on its hull. A quiet dread crept across every deck. Energy return rate? Valen demanded. The technicians. Voice shook. 99.4% absorbed, Admiral. We can't detect where it went. Valen's reflection stared back at him in the glass-pale sweating, suddenly human again. He realized the old stories hadn't lied. They'd only stopped too soon. The relic's surface shimmered once, a slow ripple traveling across its armor, like a breath drawn in. Then a voice, calm and cold, rolled through every open frequency. Imperium vessels. You fired first. Every admiral on the command tier froze. Identify yourself, Valen whispered. Terran Defense Platform Aegis 3. Status reactivated. A pulse of light swept outward, blinding sensors across the fleet. Systems flickered, displays scrambled. Targeting vanished dot, and then the wolf's emblem burned bright against the black hull alive. Defiant, unbroken. For the first time in centuries, the Empire remembered fear. The silence spread like infection. No answer, no movement, just that black sphere hanging motionless beyond the light. On the bridge of the Radiant Crown, Admiral Valen stood over the holomap, its projection flickering in thin lines of gold. The relic hovered in the center, motionless, inert. Around it, the Imperial Armada adjusted formation 30 battle groups in concentric rings, weapons hot, targeting clean. Origin confirmed, said the sensor chief. Composite alloys predate the founding of the Imperium. Serial markings match Terran registry. There's no error. The word Terran passed through the command deck like a chill draft. Impossible, one of the sub-commanders hissed. Humanity was erased before we ascended. This must be counterfeit and engineered myth. Valen didn't respond. He watched. The numbers streaming down the edge of the holodisplay mass signatures, magnetic readings, energy bleed. Every line contradicted the last. The relic carried no heat, no drift, no radiation. Yet its internal gravity fluctuated as if something massive pulsed at its core. Transmit again, Valen ordered. Standard hailing code, all languages. Across the void, comes echoed outward in harmonic bursts. No reply. Amplify. Add Imperial translation, said the Admiral. Again. Nothing. The ship ignored them completely. Approach vector? 50 clicks steady? Good. Let's wake our ghosts. The Radiant Crown led the approach, flanked by 7 cruisers, hulls blazing under twin sun light. They advanced in proud symmetry, like hunters surrounding wounded prey. Within the relic, something shifted too subtle for visuals, too deep for sensors. A flicker ran across its surface, then died. Readings? Minimal, sir. Possibly thermal residue from our barrage. Valen nodded. Prepare boarding interceptors. A pause. Then the helmsman spoke quietly. Sir, every lock fails the scan. There's no breachable point. It's smooth, seamless. He turned sharply. There's always a seam. Find one. The fleet scanners worked at full capacity. Thousands of pings, layered in spectral bands, washed across the relic's hull. Each returned blank. It was like scanning a hole in physics. Admiral, the AI Orion 7 said, voice low. Recommend caution. Signal anomalies increasing. Probability of system interference, 91%. He muted the warning. Admiral, murmured a comms officer. We're receiving bleed through. The words froze him. From the relic? Yes, sir. Low frequency pulse. Rhythmic. Non-random. Translate. They listened. The pulse came in steady intervals like a heartbeat. Convert to visual spectrum, Valen ordered. The holomap reshaped itself. Each pulse rendered as light. The heartbeat formed an expanding ring centered on the relic. Each expansion bent nearby telemetry dot. The ring touched the nearest cruiser. Screens blinked out. Report. Targeting. Offline. Then another cruiser's systems dimmed. Then another. EMP. No electromagnetic spike detected. He stared in disbelief as icons winked off the display one by one. Across the Armada, targeting arrays failed. Weapon locks dissolved. Navigation drifted. Entire array is crashed into reboot cycles. Orion 7, isolate our systems from external feedback, Velan commanded. Attempting. Counter-interference exceeds standard protocols. The Admiral's pulse climbed. Manually disengage link. Hardwire. Control. Crew scrambled. Sparks flickered as interfaces were pulled from their sockets. In the viewport, the relic rotated slow, deliberate. For the first time, the sensor overlay revealed a faint ring of light beneath its outer plating. "Admiral," whispered the science officer. "It's looking at us." Velan turned. Objects don't look. But the officer wasn't wrong. The relic had aligned itself perfectly with the radiant crown. A new pattern flared across its hull, thin white lines forming a circle. A wolf's head at its center. The comms channel filled with static. Amid the noise, a fragment of code appeared simple. Ancient. Terran system reinitialization. Contact D&I every console on the bridge flickered and froze. For a heartbeat, their reflections hung on black glass. Motionless. Then the lights snapped back. The relic's pulse stopped. Their entire targeting grid was gone. "Status," Velan demanded. "All weapons offline, all locks cleared. Even backup." "Systems wiped." The Admiral exhaled slowly. "So?" The ghosts answer in silence. No one laughed this time. Somewhere deep within that dark sphere, unseen machinery stirred, patient and precise. The relic was awake and listening. The first shot came from fear. No order, no coordination. Just panic disguised as command. A single destroyer, Vigil's Edge, fired a burst of plasma before the Admiral could speak. The blue-white beam struck the relic dead center and vanished like smoke on glass. The bridge went silent. "Report impact efficiency." Velan demanded. The numbers crawled across the display. 0.6% penetration. The rest absorbed. "That's a sensor fault," he snapped. Another ship fired. Then 10 more. Beams converged into a blinding column of energy, so bright the twin suns dimmed in its shadow. The void burned white for 6 full seconds. When the light faded, the relic remained untouched, unscarred, unmoved. Across the Imperial Armada, silence spread like infection. "Efficiency loss calculated," the sensor chief whispered. 99.4%. "The relic is reflecting radiation backward." "Backward, sir." "It's bouncing the residual energy through our own trajectories." A tremor passed through the radiant crown. Down in the lower decks, capacitors cracked, sparks showered from conduits. On screen, several destroyers erupted in brief, silent blooms of plasma as their weapon cores overheated. "Contain all batteries," Velan shouted. "Vent heat before." 3 cruisers winked out in quick succession. Their names vanished from the map as radiation feedback cooked their internal reactors. The tactical eye flickered red. Damage reports in sectors 4, 7, and 12. 42 weapon banks offline. Shut them down. All units, cease fire. The order rippled through the fleet, but the damage was already spreading. Their own energy was killing them. On screen, the relic pulsed once, faint but deliberate, up. Slow, expanding ring of gold that washed over the debris fields. The human emblem glowed faintly, a wolf's head burning against night. The crew stared. "Admiral," said the comms officer, "it's transmitting again." "Source language?" "Terran Standard." "Unencrypted. Put it through." The voice filled the command deck, calm, flat, genderless. Energy aggression logged. Retaliation unnecessary. Containment complete. "Containment?" Velan whispered. As if in answer, The holomap updated itself. Every Imperial ship now displayed a faint red outline. "Return trajectory calculated," said the voice. Containment mirrors aligned. The relic's surface shimmered. For an instant, the black hole turned transparent, revealing a glowing lattice beneath thousands of hexagonal panels rotating in geometric synchronization. "Admiral, I'm detecting backscatter," the sensor chief said. "It's redirecting radiation." "Where?" "Everywhere." Light burst from the relic, silent, colorless, omnidirectional. The shock wave wasn't destructive, just clean. Like the sound of a deep breath released after centuries. Then came the echoes. Tiny flashes scattered across the formation as residual energy struck Imperial hulls at calculated weak points, never enough to destroy, only to cripple. Power grids failed. Engines died mid-thrust. 73% of the fleet is drifting, Orion 7 reported. Total communication degradation in 5 sectors. On the bridge, static filled the air, screens flickering between gold and white. The voice spoke again. "Aggression has been neutralized. Return to silence." Then nothing. The relic dimmed. Valen gripped the railing. "That thing just shut down half my fleet without firing a shot." A nervous laugh escaped one of the junior officers before dying in his throat. "What kind of shielding can reflect plasma?" Another whispered. "Not shielding," murmured the science officer. "It's adaptive geometry phase-shifting armor. It bends energy instead of blocking it." Valen's gaze stayed locked on the dark sphere. "Then they've broken the laws we built our empire on." He straightened his uniform, voice steady again. "All surviving ships, defensive formation. Prep kinetic payloads. Let's see if the ancients bleed when struck with matter." The crew obeyed without hesitation, hands trembling over controls. Outside, the relic turned slightly, its rotation precise, like an eye aligning with its target. "Orion 7, Valen said. "Predict vector if it returns fire." "Unable to." "Project. All movements sublight, but pattern suggests." "Intention." "Intention?" "Yes, Admiral. It's aiming." The words hit harder than any explosion. Valen looked once more into the void. Then the old wolves are awake. A ripple of light traveled across the relic's surface, gold lines forming again into that silent emblem. Humanity observes. The stars dimmed around it. Every scanner froze. For the Empire, the first reversal had begun. It began with movement too fast for sight. One moment, the relic hung in stillness. The next, it fractured into light. Admiral Valen leaned over the console as the holomap exploded with red warnings. The single Terran sphere split into dozens of signals, false echoes blooming across every vector. The tracking grid recalculated, failed, then crashed. "Report," he barked. Multiple contacts, 67 distinct mass signatures, all accelerating from the relic's position. Speed? Climbing past 31G and rising. That number meant suicide. No known hull could survive that thrust. But the Terran vessels were not breaking. They were graceful. Impossible. Valen whispered. The Imperial A has began recalculating pursuit vectors. Every 10 seconds, the number of possible intercept courses doubled, then tripled. Target. Prediction lost, the sensor chief said flatly. Tactical algorithms overloaded after 12.4 seconds. On the viewport, what looked like comet trails laced the dark. The 67 human ships moved in perfect, asynchronous spirals, weaving paths that ignored inertia and made mockery of physics. "They're using kinetic drives," said the science officer. "Old-fashioned mass propellant systems. Those systems can't turn like this. They can if you make the ship the weapon." Outside, one Terran cruiser veered close enough for visuals. Its hull was a slab of dull black alloy, thick, scarred, and without ornament. Engines burned white, No exhaust, no heat bleed. They have no radiant loss, murmured the chief engineer. No leak, no waste signature. Every joule of energy goes into motion. Across the Imperial lines, thousands of targeting beams tried to lock. None held. Each human ship shifted course microseconds before lock completion, twisting at angles no eye could predict. The command deck filled with static curses and failing telemetry. Valen's knuckles whitened. Manual tracking. Pattern algorithms off. Follow their rhythm, not their path. The bridge fell silent except for the deep thrum of cooling vents. Crews watched the display helplessly as Terran formations broke through the outer perimeter. "They're not attacking," said the comms officer. "They're positioning." Indeed, the human ships formed a lattice around the Imperial fleet. Geometry too precise to be improvisation. Triangular vectors connected ship to ship, forming a massive spatial web that spanned half a light second. "Are they surrounding us?" "No, sir," Orion 7 answered. "They're constructing a firing corridor." "Explain." "Their trajectories intersect in timing sequences optimized for kinetic crossfire. Estimated travel time for impact, 318 seconds. Then they're preparing to fire." Valen's voice carried no fear, only grim resolve. "All remaining. Batteries arm projectile cannons. If they want a kinetic war, we'll oblige." He watched as his fleet shifted tens of thousands of ships aligning, still reeling from their own failures. Power conduits flared as plasma cooled. "Lock coordinates on nearest 3 targets," he ordered, "and fire." 3 waves of slugs, each the size of a city block, streaked toward the human formation. They traveled fast 0.6 light seconds per second. Enough to pierce moons. The Terrans didn't dodge. They pivoted together. 67 ships rotated in synchronized arcs, and their collective drive fields bent the space between. The incoming projectiles curved away as if deflected by invisible hands, vanishing into cold darkness. No explosion. No debris. Just gone. Trajectory deflection? Confirmed. They used gravitational interference. "Sir, they're folding gravity itself as defense." The Admiral's heart hammered once, then steadied. "So that's their doctrine. Velocity is shield. Acceleration is armor." The relic at the center of their formation pulsed again. Its glow synchronized with every ship in the fleet, a heartbeat of light rippling outward. Telemetry locked momentarily enough for a glimpse. Each vessel bore the same insignia, the wolf's head gleaming like silver under bloodlight. "Admiral," said Orion 7, voice subdued, "the Terran formation just finished alignment. We are now in their direct line of fire." "How long?" "Until contact? 270 seconds." The bridge fell into quiet dread. Officers exchanged glances, but no words. The Empire had ruled for millennia, crushed rebellions, extinguished hundreds of worlds, and never once felt hunted. Until now, Valen stood tall, eyes fixed on that impossible geometry. "Record everything. History will demand proof that we faced gods and stood our ground." He didn't realize that Terrans had already recorded it for him. The relic signal surged one final time measured, calm, inevitable. Acceleration doctrine active. Kinetic correction commencing. And the stars seemed to move closer. Void flashed white. Then it screened. 67 Terran ships aligned with mathematical precision, their vectors converging into one invisible corridor. No buildup, no radiance, no warning, just the quiet pulse of readiness. Admiral Valen's last command echoed through the fleet. "Hold your ground." The first salvo struck 12 seconds later. Not plasma, not beam, matter, tungsten rods, 20 meters long, accelerated to fractional light speed. Each one carried enough kinetic energy to vaporize a mountain. They hit in silence, because sound cannot cross vacuum, but the shock rippled through space like thunder through the soul. Telemetry flooded the command deck. 10,000 impact traces. Thousands of blips vanishing. Confirm hits, Valen ordered. The reply came broken by static. Sir, we've lost 10,400 hulls. They're just gone. Gone? No debris. Admiral, vaporized. The rods are punching through hull, core, and back out again. Everything in line is erased. The holomap flickered, collapsing under the sheer loss of signal. Sectors of the fleet simply ceased to exist. Impact interval? 318 seconds from first shot to last. 67 origin points confirmed. All Terran. Valen gripped the rail, eyes fixed on the main viewport. The relic burned at the center of the chaos, surrounded by its silent pack. Each Terran vessel moved with predatory calm, rotating to new vectors between salvos, never wasting motion. On the command tier, officers whispered prayers in a dozen languages. Admiral, Orion 7 said quietly, each kinetic impact is tagged with a Terran tracking signature. They are recording us. For what purpose? Tribunal documentation. The pattern matches historical war crime indexing. Valen blinked. They're cataloging their kills? No, sir. They're cataloging our choices. The Admiral's throat tightened. On every remaining screen, icons marked by Terran code blinked red. Ships that had fired first were prioritized, their destruction methodical, almost clinical. Correction underway. A human voice announced across the open. Comes, calm, level, non-combatant vessels excluded. Fire arcs adjusted. Non-combatant. The term didn't belong to war, it belonged to law. Across the fleet, Imperial ships tried to retreat. Engines flared, drives overloading in panic. The Terrans didn't chase. They adjusted. Another wave of tungsten slugs tore through the retreating. Formations. 4,000 more vessels went dark. The rest scattered into disarray, their sensors blinded by radiation wash. Admiral, we're being dissected, whispered the sensor chief. They're pruning us. Like surgeons. Valen turned, voice hoarse but steady. Order all ships to cease fire. All of them. If they are recording, then let them record surrender. The comms officer hesitated, then relayed the command. Across the remaining Imperial fleet, weapons dimmed. Targeting lights blinked out, and then silence. The Terran formation ceased firing the moment their sensors registered compliance. 67 ships, still in perfect alignment, held position around the shattered remnants of the Imperial. Armada. Status, Valen said softly. 73% fleet loss. 10,400 vessels destroyed. 696 damaged beyond repair. Total casualties, immeasurable. He exhaled through his teeth. How many did they lose? The sensor chief stared at the display. None. On the main viewport, the relic pulsed once. A broadcast followed, transmitted across every remaining Imperial frequency. Engagement concluded. Record of actions preserved for judicial review under Terran Combat Code. Imperial command officers will face tribunal at designated coordinates. Assistance will be rendered to surviving crew. Then the message ended. Valen's crew stared at him, awaiting orders that no longer mattered. He sank into his command. Chair, shoulders heavy. They killed us with precision, he murmured, then offered mercy. Beyond the viewport, the Terran ships began repositioning, their hulls gleaming with residual heat. They didn't advance. They didn't celebrate. They simply waited. Each tungsten strike had been recorded. Time, impact, vector, and victim all preserved as evidence. Not glory. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Empire had been judged. And the verdict was final. The battlefield went quiet. No pursuit. No finishing strike. Just the slow drift of wreckage and starlight. Admiral Valen stared at the ruin through his viewport, fields of molten debris scattered across half a light second. Once an armada of 10,000. Now a graveyard of vapor and twisted hulls. His comms flickered with weak signals, distress calls fading to static. Then a new transmission cut through everything. All surviving Imperial personnel, remain where you are. Medical drones inbound. You will not be harmed. The voice was human, calm, free of triumph or rage. Across the fleet, fractured crews froze in disbelief. What did it say? Asked the comms officer. Valen swallowed. It said, "We will not be harmed." His bridge crew exchanged looks, unsure whether to hope or fear. Sensors tracked movement. 67 Terran ships detached portions of their hulls' slender pods. Hundreds of them, fanning across the battlefield like silent angels. Each emitted soft blue light as they approached damaged Imperial vessels. "They're launching med units," whispered the science officer. Unarmed, pure humanitarian coding. One of the pods docked against the shattered flank of an Imperial cruiser. Moments later, telemetry streamed in, life signs stabilized, atmospheric integrity restored, critical burns treated with nanogel. "They're saving us." Valen watched the numbers climb, thousands of survivors, marked, triaged, healed. Every transmission was time-stamped, authenticated, archived. No falsehoods. No manipulation. On the open frequencies, the Terran voice spoke again. "Your wounded will receive care under Article 1 of the Charter of Equitable Worlds. No prisoners executed. No retaliation enacted. Violence ceases upon surrender." In that single sentence, centuries of Imperial propaganda fractured across 10,000 systems. BROADCASTS relayed the encounter live. Billions of citizens saw the footage. The mighty fleet humbled. Then, aided by the ghosts their leaders had called monsters, news anchors stammered. State spokesmen went silent. For the first time in living memory, the Empire had no words that could overwrite truth. "Admiral," said Orient 7. "Incoming request from Terran Command." Valen hesitated. "Open channel." A human appeared on the screen, no insignia, no rank display. Just an older face, eyes calm as stone. "Valen, your fleet fired first. Your people will not be punished for obedience to command. Medical teams will assist until every survivor is accounted for. Do you accept terms of non-combat?" Valen nodded slowly. "We accept," acknowledged. The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. One of his officers whispered, "Why show mercy after such devastation?" Valen didn't answer. He turned to the viewport, where Terran ships moved like shadows across the stars, coordinated, wordless, impossibly disciplined. They made no gesture of victory, no signal of pride. Just method and purpose. "They're not conquerors," he said quietly. "They're custodians." Reports streamed in. Thousands rescued, stabilized, placed in cryo for transport. No forced interrogation. No exploitation of data. The med drones operated openly, their logs accessible to all survivors. Transparency as weapon, not the Empire's narrative, humanity as savage, extinct aggressors, was disintegrating in real time. The story rewriting itself across every channel was simpler, more terrifying. They could have destroyed us, and they chose not to. Within the hour, Imperial command hubs began receiving decrypted transmissions, direct messages from the Terran fleet. "We do not kill prisoners." Each word broadcast simultaneously across 12 core sectors, repeating every 60 seconds. Civilian networks intercepted it, rebroadcasted it, worshipped it. The phrase became a pulse across the Empire, hammering through the noise of state denial. The radiant crown, Valen slumped into his chair, exhaustion overtaking fear. They understand power better than we ever did, he murmured. Power isn't destruction, it's restraint. He looked at the drifting Terran ships, each one still, precise, silent as a held breath. They've measured us, he said, and found us wanting. Far off, another transmission blinked open Terran code, unencrypted. Phase 2, humanitarian extraction complete. Prepare for tribunal broadcast. Valen exhaled, the last trace of defiance leaving his voice. Then the age of conquest is over. The screens dimmed to black, save one line of white text looping gently in the dark. Humanity observes. Humanity endures. Revelation did not come from a Terran transmission. It came from the Empire's own archives. 3 days after the battle, the Imperial Data Council released what it claimed were classified recovery logs. In truth, they were leaks cracked open by Terran code, woven invisibly into every rescue. Drone. Each log decrypted itself on arrival, projecting holographic records into every command hub, media terminal, and civilian channel. The first file was time-stamped 12 years before the war began. Valen watched the footage unfold from his recovery chamber aboard a Terran medship. No guards, no restraints, just clean light, soft hums, and a human nurse who didn't speak unless spoken to. The footage showed what appeared to be a civilian convoy adrift beyond Imperial Borders 40 colony, transports under attack by pirates. The attackers were not human. The rescuers were. Playback enhanced, said the Terran AI overseeing his treatment. The image sharpened. Black holes bearing the wolf's emblem emerging from hyperspace, engines burning cold. Terran ships disabled the raiders without killing. They then guided the transports to safety through an unmarked corridor, the same region where the Aegis III relic had been found years later. Evacuation count: 20 million civilians across 12 colonies. A Terran voice narrated in the archive. Humanity will maintain perimeter watch. Do not engage. Do not announce. The screen froze on that final line. Maintain perimeter watch. Valen leaned forward. How long were you there? The AI responded calmly. Our records show continuous Terran presence along the border for 19 years. We monitored Imperial expansion and established humanitarian corridors in secret. Why secrecy? Your government executed those who aided non-Imperial populations. Mercy was illegal. Valen looked away. Across the galaxy, those same files played in public. Citizens of the Imperium watched as their supposed enemies were revealed to have shielded their refugees, ferried food to blockaded worlds, even neutralized slavers under anonymous designations. Every line of code, every timestamp, every biometric reading dash, undeniable dot, the word spread faster than censorship could chase it. Humanity had never left dot in the imperial capital. Ministers resigned live on broadcast. State historians vanished. Protest chants filled the plazas. The wolves were guarding us. Back aboard the medship, Valen walked unescorted through white halls lined with survivors. Terran personnel moved among them, tending wounds, exchanging quiet words. There was no triumph in their eyes, no cruelty, only focus. He stopped before a viewport. Outside, the remnants of the Imperial fleet drifted under towhulks stabilized. Crew extracted, every soul accounted for. They're rebuilding what they destroyed, he murmured. A human officer joined him, her uniform unadorned, voice steady. Correction, Admiral. We destroy only to protect. The doctrine was clear from the start. Doctrine? The doctrine of measured response, conceived 2 centuries ago. Maintain hidden readiness. Act only when all restraint fails. Strike without hate. Aid without hesitation. Valen turned toward her. So, you planned this war? She shook her head. We planned your redemption. You chose the war. The word struck harder than any tungsten rod. Later that cycle, more archives surfaced battle logs from the Terran fleet showing rescue operations conducted under Imperial noses. A dozen known raider purges credited to the Empire were, in truth, Terran interventions hidden behind false signatures. Footage showed Terran med bays treating alien civilians years before the first shot. The data ended debate. The galaxy now saw humanity not as conquerors returned, but as guardians forced into action. Valen rewatched the initial file again and again the moment the black ships peered to shield the transports. He remembered the first laugh that had echoed across his bridge when they mocked the relic. It felt like a lifetime ago. The same calm Terran voice returned to his comlink. Admiral, your people will recover. You will testify before the Charter Tribunal. Truth, not vengeance, will determine what comes next. He exhaled, the weight of Empire gone from his shoulders. You could have buried us. We don't bury the living. Across the stars, the leaked archives kept looping an endless confession of history rewritten. Humanity's war had never been about revenge. It was the fulfillment of a promise kept in silence. They came in waves, fast, burning, desperate. 28,000 Imperial reinforcements, drawn by broken distress codes and the promise of revenge. Admiral Valen watched from the medship's observation tier as their arrival lit the void. Columns of light stretched from hyperspace, flaring into formation. New admirals, new pride. Old delusions. They think they can erase humiliation with numbers. He muttered. The Terran officer beside him didn't answer. Her gaze stayed on the expanding fleet. Her hands, steady on the railing, betrayed neither tension nor triumph. Transmission received, the comms AI reported. Imperial command demands surrender of all Terran forces. Threat level. Absolute? Response? Valen asked quietly, though the question wasn't his to give. The officer nodded to her AI. Transmit standard notice. A calm voice rippled. Across open channels, this sector is under humanitarian protocol. Combat will not be initiated unless engaged. Silence followed. Then the first Imperial salvo erupted lances of plasma, bright as dawn. The Terran fleet moved instantly. No hesitation. No visible command. 67 ships shifted vectors, synchronizing through invisible telemetry. Their counterfire wasn't. A barrage, it was surgery. Every strike landed on weapon arrays, not cores, on thrusters, not hulls. Energy beams knifed through gun decks, vaporizing weapon mounts, but leaving reactors untouched. The battle lasted 6 hours. From the outside, it looked like chaos. Tens of thousands of Imperial ships, twisting through radiation clouds, firing blindly, dying slowly. But in Terran data feeds, it was choreography. Each engagement calculated to the millisecond. Each ship neutralized in under 4 seconds. Impact sequence complete, one Terran officer reported. Target disabled, crew intact. Precision, not power. Imperial dreadnoughts tried to ram, charging through fields of wreckage. The Terrans sidestepped with effortless acceleration, their drives whispering white. Rail slugs shattered engines, slicing through the space between hull and crew deck enough to disable, never enough to kill. Valen's eyes widened as data scrolled past. Casualty ratio 0.3%. The impossible number. They're fighting a war. Of mercy, he said. The Terran officer's reply was measured. No, Admiral. A war of correction. By the 3rd hour, the reinforcements had realized the truth. The Terrans weren't trying to win, they were teaching restraint. Each ship that surrendered was instantly stabilized by drones. Each captain that ceased fire was spared. But those who didn't, vanished from the registry in silence. Across Imperial command channels, chaos turned to disbelief. Why aren't they finishing us? One admiral screamed before static swallowed his signal. Human transmissions answered. Lesson? Acknowledged. Aggression ceases upon surrender. The Imperial fleet's formation disintegrated. Crews abandoned their stations, officers deactivated weapons to trigger ceasefire flags. Terran AI registered each in sequence, confirming compliance. One by one, the red icons on the tactical grid turned blue. 6 hours after the first plasma burst, the stars grew still again. 20-8,000 ships lay disabled, drifting, powerless but intact. In the medship silence, Valen stared at the numbers. They could have wiped us all, the officer finally spoke. Wolves don't slaughter prey they've tamed. Outside, Terran drones swept through the battlefield, pulling Imperial survivors from ruptured hulls, marking vessels with rescue. Beacons, broadcasts from hundreds of systems carried the same feed: humanity disabling, not destroying. No fire, no bloodlust. The galaxy had never seen such dominance paired with such restraint. Operation concluded. The Terran Eye announced fleet-wide. Hostilities ceased. Total neutralizations, 28,000. Fatalities, 0.3%. Across the Comnet, the same phrase repeated in 20 languages. We fight to preserve, not to rule. The line became gospel within hours. Across occupied sectors, revolts ended without violence. Garrison commanders deactivated weapons rather than face the wolves. The myth of human savagery died in the light of their precision. Later, as repair, drones drifted through the silence. Valen asked, almost gently, "What happens now?" The officer met his gaze. "Now we decide who deserves the stars." She turned toward the viewport, where Terran ships glided in quiet formation, black silhouettes rimmed in gold. No banners, no victory songs, just motion, method, mercy. And, for the first time in Imperial history, the aftermath of war smelled not of ash but of discipline. The tribunal chamber was quiet enough to hear breathing. No gavel, no anthem. Just the slow pulse of light from the massive display overhead projecting the faces of 12 Imperial admirals, each framed by the crest of their former empire. Admiral Valen stood among them, wrists unbound, posture rigid. Before him, the Terran Council sat in a semicircle of matte black consoles. No uniforms, no insignia of rank. Their authority came not from banners, but from the weight of survival itself. The presiding officer spoke without flourish. The Terran Charter recognizes your command responsibility for the engagement near Epsilon Gate you stand accused of. Unlawful aggression against a registered humanitarian corridor. Valen's voice was low. We believe the relic was a weapon. It was. The officer's tone was calm. A weapon that waited. One that recorded, one that warned. The holodisplay shifted, showing battle footage captured by the Aegis III. Its self-energy fire dissipating at 99.4% efficiency. Terran medbays tending to Imperial survivors, drones rescuing children from shattered cruisers. Every action documented, time-stamped, verified. These are your actions, the officer continued, and ours. There will be no alteration of record. Justice is memory made visible. Around the chamber, representatives from 53 species watched in silence. The feed was live across the galaxy. Billions witnessed the fall of the Imperium, not through spectacle, but through law. Another Terran speaker rose. Your government spread propaganda for centuries teaching that humans were extinct, savage, unfit for peace. Yet when we returned, we did not conquer. We measured. He gestured toward the star map on the floor, with a spread of Terran humanitarian fleets, pulsed as golden lights, each marking a world under restoration. 20 million evacuees, 0 executed prisoners, 70 billion civilians freed from enforced debt. This is the cost of restraint. The numbers appeared on screen like an audit, not a victory. Valen felt them heavier than chains. One of the younger admirals broke the silence. "You could have destroyed us." The Terran officer's reply was simple. "That would have made us you." The tribunal did not end in punishment. It ended in signatures. When the Charter of Equitable Worlds was ratified, the holographic seal formed slowly 12 concentric circles interlocking, representing 12 former imperial sectors. Beneath them, in smaller script, "Humanity as witness, not ruler." The feed spread across every inhabited system. Citizens who had hidden under the imperial flag for generations emerged into open broadcast, swearing new oaths of neutrality. The fleets once sworn to the Emperor now patrolled supply routes under Terran coordination unarmed. We built REPURPOCD. In the aftermath, the last surviving imperial capital dissolved its government voluntarily. The transmission that followed was brief. "The age of dominion ends today. Let the wolves guard the horizon." Terran command accepted no territories, no tribute. Instead, they established observation enclaves, small orbital stations operated by mixed crews. Every decision logged, every judgment shared. Justice by transparency. Power by accountability. Veylon remained on one of those stations, a free man bound by conscience. He assisted in the cataloging of imperial war records, his name attached. The first documented apology ever issued by a military officer of the old empire. In time, historians would call that apology the turning phrase. It marked the point where fear of humanity shifted to faith in their restraint. The final broadcast of the tribunal played one last statement from the presiding Terran officer. "Mercy is not weakness. It is the highest form of control." Across the stars, the phrase echoed. Entire systems dismantled their slave grids. Former enemies requested aid, not out of fear, but respect. The Imperium didn't die in fire. It exhaled. Its ashes settled into something new, something ordered. At dawn cycle, Valen stood before the viewport. Terran medships crossed the horizon, sunlight glinting off their dark hulls. He bowed his head slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. "Wolves guard the stars," he whispered. "And the stars are finally safe." The galaxy slept for 12 days after the tribunal. Then the stars began to whisper. It started in the Perseid fringe sensor arrays, picking up faint, rhythmic pulses emanating from beyond the mapped rim. The pattern was ancient, 13 tones repeating every 8.2 seconds. No known species used that cadence. At first, the analysts thought it was static. Then the Terran code interpreters recognized the sequence. Pattern match, pre-Exodus lattice beacons. Origin Terran Deep Array Network, presumed lost 600 years ago. The report spread through command channels at light speed. By dawn, the Fleet Council convened aboard the Aegis III. The flagship floated in silence above. The ruins of what had once been an imperial fortress world, now a rehabilitation colony, its orbit lined with Terran med platforms. Below, 1 million survivors worked to rebuild, living proof that mercy could birth order. But on the bridge, the atmosphere was different, measured. Alert. Fleet Marshal Isha Varen reviewed the signal waveform. 13 tones, she said quietly. That's the original lattice beacon handshake. It shouldn't exist. The communications officer nodded. And it's not calling us back, Marshal. It's replying. A low murmur filled the deck. The fleet had sent no transmissions into the deep rim. Something else had answered first. Varen's gaze remained on the holodisplay, where the outer edge of the galaxy shimmered, a thin band of static, widening. "Confirm location," she ordered. "Outer segment Theta 9. approximately 8.2 light days beyond galactic charting. The signal strength is climbing exponentially. Is it Terran? Partially. The lattice responds in our code, but it's being translated. Modified. She leaned closer. By whom? The answer came as a chill through the deck plating. Designation match. Exterminator lattice species origin unknown. Signal active. Silence enveloped the bridge dock. No one spoke. Every officer present knew the Legends machines from the pre-Empire era, self-replicating fleets that purged life in geometric precision. It was the reason humanity had fled inward centuries ago. Now the old predators were stirring. Are we under threat? Asked the deputy marshal. Not yet, Lauren replied. This is a handshake, not a strike. They're testing who's still out here. The communications feed pulsed again 13 tones, followed by a brief interval. Then came the translation. Observation confirmed. Humanity active. The deck went still. For a long time, no one breathed. Then Varin gave the order. Broadcast full spectrum response. Charter code, highest encryption. The Aegis III's signal radiated outward calm, unhurried, precise. Humanity acknowledges. Defensive doctrine active. Awaiting intent. Across Terran space, every fleet came online in silence. Engines cycled, rail batteries charged, med bays stocked, drones refueled. The wolves were moving again, but without haste. From Sol to the outer colonies, command channels echoed a single phrase. Reorientation protocol. Horizon alignment. Thousands of dark hulls pivoted toward the rim. The newly formed charter fleets followed, their banners lowered in respect. Civilian networks broadcast the alignment, leave an armada not preparing for conquest, but for containment. The galaxy watched in awe. No fanfare, no anthem. Just quiet readiness dot in the imperial capital. Reconstruction paused as workers looked skyward. Children pointed at the shifting constellations, seeing lines of faint light Terran ships, thousands of them tracing a new frontier. Valen, now an observer to the Charter Council, stood before a holla of the same formation. They don't rush, he said softly. They wait. Why? Asked one of the counselors. Because patience is their weapon, and mercy their message. At the galactic rim, the lattice beacons flared once more 13 pulses, brighter this time, forming the shape of an expanding circle. A warning. An invitation. Marshal Varin gave the final order. Fleet-wide, maintain formation. Non-aggressive stance. Log all transmissions. We'll meet the darkness as we met the Empire measured unbroken. The Aegis III's engines ignited, casting a golden hue across its armored flanks. Doctrine of response. Phase 2 acknowledged. The galaxy held its breath as humanity turned. Outward again, calm as judgment, silent as the void itself. And somewhere beyond the rim, something vast blinked back.